Hi everyone, here's the Bookchemist once again. Today I'm finally reviewing, or at least I'm giving you my opinion on Paul Thomas Anderson's Inherent Vice, the movie based on Thomas Pynchon's 2009 novel. I have no idea why I waited so long. I waited years and years to watch this movie, considering that Pynchon is really one of my favorite writers, except for the fact that I'm personally not that much of a fan of movie adaptations, and when it comes to adapting a novel or a book into a movie, I'm what you would call a sort of media relativist. Maybe not one who's too strict, but I tend to agree with Umberto Eco. Umberto Eco famously said that The Name of the Rose, the novel, and The Name of the Rose, the movie based on the novel, the only thing those two share is the title. I tend to agree, and I tend to agree in particular when it comes to fiction such as Pynchon's. Telling a story is not just a matter of plot and characters and atmosphere and vibe, it's inextricably bound to the medium you tell the story through. And it seems to me like it's especially difficult considering the intricate nature of his plots, the complex relationships going on between the text and the character's perspective, the amount of paranormal and absurd shit that goes on a page-by-page basis. It seems to me that Thomas Pynchon in particular is a terribly difficult writer to adapt. I'm still not sure it is at all possible to adapt his novels into a movie. One thing I must say is that if you're going to adapt one of his novels, Inherent Vice is probably the wisest choice, together with possibly Vineland, I would say. But what about the movie? What about Paul Thomas Anderson's attempt? Well, first things first, I liked the movie. I thought it was a great movie, I thought it was great fun. It was a visual pleasure, of course. The whole visual aspect of it was amazing. It really captured the vibe of this 1960s beach town. I did have some doubts or some issues. The first one concerning the narrator, this woman who will occasionally relate some passages that in the novel are left to the Inherent Vice's narrator to say and to express. My main issue with that, although I did appreciate the intent and the wish to preserve some of Pynchon's textual genius in the movie, my main issue was that this woman does not talk like a human being. She talks like a writer, and like Thomas Pynchon at that. That gives those dialogues a bizarre edge that is carried on really throughout the whole movie, even in certain dialogues. Sometimes dialogues sound very, very odd in this movie. Dialogue in literature and in movies is always a matter of conventions. There's really no such thing as a realistic dialogue. People in movies, and especially people in books, do not talk at all like people in real life do. An Italian scholar called Bertoni wrote extensively about it. I'll put links in the description box. More famously, Dave Eggers made fun of that in the introduction to his heartbreaking work of Staggering Genius, this sort of memoir where he says that what he's going to relate, dialogues he's going to use, are going to be true to what happened, except that he changed them, otherwise they would all be dialogues like, dude, she died. And of course that's not acceptable, and of course Eggers does that to make fun of the idea that it's at all possible to relate events in the form of non-fiction. The point is that Pynchon's dialogue in particular is extremely quirky and extremely fun and extremely crazy at times, but it works because it is inserted in the textual world built by his novels. Within this context, within this textual world where sentences can go on for whole paragraphs and you get all sorts of bizarre subordinates and weird shit happening, that works 100%, whether we're talking about a dialogue between characters or whether we're talking about the narrator going on for a while. I'm not that sure that that works when it is translated to human actors talking over, I don't know, a drink. Except that I have to admit, when it comes to recreating this atmosphere, Paul Thomas Anderson was at times very, very good. One of the great things about Pynchon, probably the thing I love the most about his fiction, is that it always walks the line of the fantastic. The fantastic is a definition invented by a scholar called Todorov. I filmed a video about it recently. I'll put links again in the description box. Basically, to keep it simple, in Thomas Pynchon's books, the weird shit that's going on all the time can either have a normal, sensible explanation, or it can have a supernatural explanation, or at least, if not really supernatural, in terms of demons and goblins, in terms of, there are hidden powers that we don't understand and that are beyond our power of comprehension. And all of that, of course, is complicated by the fact that in Thomas Pynchon, all characters kind of do drugs constantly. And Paul Thomas Anderson, in some scenes, was very, very good at creating this type of liminal world and at representing this reality where everything, maybe there's nothing wrong, but at the same time, maybe everything can go wrong very fast at any moment. There's a scene where Doc Sportello is talking to the sax player in the in that house where the cult band works. He's talking to Owen Wilson, and they're in front of a window, and there's a weird atmosphere, and there's weird music going on, and people keep passing by the window, and it's not even clear whether they're all even wearing clothes, and at times they seem almost like ghosts, and the atmosphere, the vibe of that scene is amazing. In another one, Doc Sportello, goes back home, parks his car, and kids passing by on the street very fast on skateboards or bikes or whatever, and that's really sinister and really creepy, and I love that. It recreated that atmosphere beautifully. So, is it possible at the end of the day to recreate the Pynchon atmosphere in movie form? Does that justify the adaptation? Of course the adaptation is justified, but does that mean that I personally, Mattia Ravasi, could appreciate it? Overall, I'll discuss this by referring to movies that are probably a little bit, because of their level of complexity, a little bit more up to my level. My opinion, my perspective toward book adaptations is the same I have with the Disney adaptations that keep coming out in these years. I'm a fan of those. I liked Cinderella, the recent movie, very much. I wasn't that much of a fan of the Beauty and the Beast. When it came to the Jungle Book, though, I didn't quite see the point. Same with The Lion King, which I understand is coming out either next year or a few years from now. My point is, considering that you can't really film a movie adaptation of that, and you have to use computer graphics, part of me thinks that that does not make too much sense. My very shallow opinion is that, since you are going to use computer graphics in the first place, why not just go back to the original cartoon? And that's the same, my same perspective on adapting Pynchon. Yeah, you can try, but since the movie that's going to come out is going to be an attempt to represent that type of atmosphere in movie version, that is inevitably going to fail, and since, because of the textual genius of Pynchon, most of that movie is going to be made of people talking in front of a desk, people talking at a restaurant, people talking on a couch. Does it make sense? I'm not necessarily sure, and please consider that I liked the Jungle Book, the movie adaptation, and I did like Inherent Vice, the movie. At the end of the day, I'm a literature scholar, I prefer the book. What else is new? Do let me know, though, about your personal experience with Inherent Vice, whether you thought it was a great adaptation, whether you saw the genius of it, whether you weren't sure. I'd love to hear from people who watched the movie without reading the book, in order to hear whether they got all the implications of the plot, or at least whether they felt satisfied with the plot and with the movie's structure. And overall, happy holidays, people. I filmed quite a few reviews and videos in the last few days. They'll come out in the next few weeks, together of course with the list of my favorite books from 2017, because I'm still a big fan of lists. And thank you for watching once again, guys. I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.